Good evening, back with a little bit of time lapse there. Getting kind of into a fair weather pattern here once again, and clear skies, pretty sunset out there to the west. But looking at the time lapse earlier, I don't know if you pay much attention to these, but we can see a lot of detail on what's going on here in Texas, what kind of air mass is rolling into the region. And typically the webcam here faces to the southwest. And we see here a screenshot. Right in the middle you see a freeze, and we've got two layers there. See that? There's an upper layer formed from the spreading of stratocumulus. That's up at about 6,000 or 7,000 feet there. So these are some features to look at on the sounding this evening. Here's the surface chart for this evening. And we can see we're under a southerly flow, maybe a slight south-southeasterly flow. And we're bringing up the moisture. So you can see the dew points there running right around 60 to about 63 degrees. A little bit of marginal VFR out in the Louisiana-Texas border. And any evidence of a front out to the east, to the west? No, not really. In fact, see the dry line here starting to take hold. And I'm going to draw that roughly from about Sanderson up to Big Spring, maybe up to the Elk City area, probably around Pratt, and then up to around the Salina area. Then after that, it looks like it kind of loses definition here. So we're going to be seeing a lot more of that dry line this spring. And as we get into this return flow pattern, this tends to set up in this area right here around West Texas. And as we get faster westerly flow set up, that will tend to pull the dry line further eastward out towards the I-35 area. Okay, going through our charts here, let's check out what the soundings look like. And here this is showing the dew point and the winds. And I'll click on that and bring up a model high-resolution rapid refresh sounding. And those cloud layers are going to be right around here, and then maybe a higher layer. This would be up about 6,000 to 7,000 feet. So here we've got the very strong moisture. At about 3,000, you see the temperature and dew point line converging right there, getting our LCL right at that level. And you see the south winds. And then as those clouds, as they rise and stratify underneath this inversion, we get that higher layer that you saw there on the freeze frame. Above that, a cap. So no chance of deep convection today. If we did, lapse rates are very marginal, and the CAPE values are fairly low. So to really bring that out, now you see the importance of short waves coming in from the west. That helps to prepare this upper layer, the mid and upper levels, and increases the lapse rates and allows for much higher CAPE. And eventually that does remove the cap itself. Okay, let's go back to the other charts here. Again, we're going to have to look at minimum temperatures because the maximum temperature chart is still not available for about another 20 or 30 minutes. So, minimum temperatures today across the U.S. Looked fairly mild. 30s and 40s and some 50s here in Texas, and then up where we had that nor'easter earlier during the week. Teens, once again, with that snowpack covering the area and allowing some fairly decent radiation. 500 millibar flow, as you might guess, northwesterly flow across much of the U.S. And here's that ridge. That's kind of a major shortwave ridge there working its way eastward. and allowing for pressure rises back in this area. And we're seeing the departure of that deep trough on the east coast. So higher heights are starting to come in. And as that works in, that's going to bring fair weather across much of the U.S. And then where weather is deteriorating is on the other side of the ridge, back in this area. So increasing clouds anywhere from Winnipeg down to the Dakotas, down to Denver, westward into the Pacific Northwest. And this is where the weather is really taking place this evening. Okay, let me take a quick look at chat here. We got Andrew and Sue M here, and Mark and Alexi, Ron and Fun with Tech, Kevin McKinney, Tom J is here. Alexi forgot how to upload a video here. It's best to send videos to weathergraphics.com. Go to the website there, and there's a contact link, and you can email that or use a service like FileDropper and send the link there. Victor Cabot and Jason Flood, Ray Woody, and Adam Davis. Jason Boggs is here. Brett Dean, 33 degrees there. Snow expected over the next 48 hours, Clipper related and lake effect. Yeah, quite a bit of weather there in the northwest. Adam Davis can't complain about seeing a dry line. Michael Burrell is here. And Sarah Wood. And Fun with Tech asking about the minimum temperatures, 500 millibar flow. Are those from Digital Atmosphere? This is from the Canadian Weather Service here. I like to kind of use a mix of charts. And then the other charts, these come from the National Centers for Environmental Prediction. So they're basically official Weather Service forecasts. And amazingly, the Weather Service has produced these minimum maximum temperature charts ever since the early 70s. This is kind of legacy charts from the DIFAC service. So fortunately, they haven't discontinued those. These are very useful graphics for sure. Kevin McKinney, 15-degree low as far south as Crossville, Tennessee. Blue skies in Indiana there from Sue M. And Sarah Wood, winter weather advisory here in northern Indiana, expecting a mix of snow, sleet, and freezing rain. Yeah, that's with that next wave that's going to be coming through. Remember, we've got two waves coming through the northern U.S., and that'll come to a halt, and then we're going to be watching the southwestern U.S. So there's the satellite loop, and give me just a minute here. Let me grab some water. Okay, and you've probably noticed that very bright purple over Arizona. And this is infrared satellite imagery. So here, very warm temperatures. In fact, how high have the temperatures? I wonder if we've got maximum temperatures. We can see that the minimums started out at 68 in Las Vegas, very warm there, and 63 at Imperial. 61 in Blythe, and I'm very curious what the maxes were for today. Unfortunately, I bet that we don't have those charts yet. Okay, we're coming up on 17th of 0Z, so yeah, they're still not in. Yesterday's charts look like this. Wow, 96 at Imperial, 91 at Blythe, so a bit of a heat wave out of this area. And 96 at Thermal, that is very appropriately named. So I don't know if we're going to get those coming out yet. Looks like those come out at 15 after the hour, so maybe we'll be able to check back towards the end of the webcast and pull that up. Okay, time to do the thermal analysis, so let's do that. You can see the nor'easter way out there over the Atlantic. So pretty much south of Greenland here. And there's the trailing cold front. Doesn't look like we've had any wave development along the tail end of that front. So behind that, just a large area of cold air advection in the old occluded low. Looks like that's over the Prince Edward Island and Labrador area. So that has really made some mileage over the past night or so. In the wake of that, high pressure over the eastern U.S., and then west of that, here's that warm air advection pattern, all the way from Texas up to Minnesota. And it looks like we've got development of a warm front maybe around the Omaha area into South Dakota, and maybe a cold front somewhere in this area. So let's check out where that is on the surface chart. Go up to the northern plains, up to Fred's territory there. And yeah, it looks like we've probably got a bit of a warm front, dividing these 70-degree readings around Grand Island from these lower 50s around Des Moines, and even 30 in southern Minnesota here. So it looks to be like a warm front right in this area. And at first glance, it looks like maybe there's a cold front coming down right through here. But we have to keep in mind that these fronts are defined by temperature readings. These are density boundaries. So if we go from these upper 50s up to 60, we're not really seeing cold air in the wake of that line right here. It's only when we get into Montana that we pick up that falling temperature readings here. So we go from 60 to 49 and then 50. So this looks like the arrival of the cold air mass right here. So I would probably be more inclined to go with a front through this area right here. And then this area here probably responding to a bit of cyclogenesis out in Nebraska and South Dakota here. So the warm front connecting back up to the system like that, and then an occlusion northward. Any idea what kind of occlusion that is? We've got warm occlusions and cold occlusions. Well, the air on this side definitely looks a lot cooler. No, on second glance, it actually looks about the same as the air on this side here. So I'm seeing low 30s, low to mid 30s. Same thing on this side. So if we go more by the shape of that front with relation to the rest of the system, this looks a bit like a cold front. So I'd probably be inclined to call that a cold occlusion right there. So if we were looking at a warm occlusion, it would probably be shaped a little bit more like this, for example. So there's the cold front, there's the warm front, and if we had a warm occlusion, that would trail up to the north like that. And you can see it's acting a little bit more like a warm front in this case. So the air back here sliding up and over the much colder air out to the west or to the east. But as I mentioned earlier, just to clear up any confusion, this looks to be a cold occlusion moving through Canada here. And then the rest of the northwest, getting off to the edge of the image here, but let me check that out real quick. Just looking at southerly flow across this region. Let me get rid of that real quick. And there we go. There's that southerly flow coming up through the northwest U.S. And it looks like we have to go all the way up to northern British Columbia to find the polar front. So going back to the thickness chart, I'm seeing a little bit of a discontinuity here. Remember I was saying that it looked like we had to go up into British Columbia to find that polar front. The thickness chart showing the boundary may be well to the south, out in this area. So I'm kind of going back and forth between the two charts and trying to get some consistency here. So I'm focusing on this area, but it looks like I've actually got to go south. So we go to the south here. Now we do pick up a little bit of northerly flow in here. So yeah, that thickness chart has helped me out, and that clarifies that we've probably got our polar front from northern Nevada into northern California like this, coming up on the San Francisco area to the Sacramento to the San Francisco area, pushing south there. And that'll connect back up into that Canadian system, kind of like that. Okay, so we've got a pretty good handle there, finally, on what's happening there in the northwest. Okay, let's take a look at dynamics here. Okay, for tonight, there's that polar front jet kind of in place like that, and we will expect to find the polar front well south of that. So that gives us a pretty good, that's pretty consistent there with the low-level data. So we've got our fronts at the surface kind of like that. We find our polar front right near that triple point in the Dakotas, so that looks good. Occlusion north of that, so that looks good. And then the tail end of that Atlantic system down in this area. So everything is looking just fine here. And then we've got that warm air advection pattern in place in Texas right there. Okay, what do we have going on for the next day or so? Well, first of all, we've got that first Northern Plains wave coming into the Great Lakes area. So that'll get started by tomorrow night. This is going to be the time of the webcast tomorrow night, so we'll see things deteriorating in the Chicago area out to Detroit. And then by the time we do the following webcast on Saturday, looks like the central part of the Atlantic coast will be under the gun here. And then here comes round 2 up in the Pacific Northwest. That'll track mostly across the Canadian prairies and into the Ontario area. That'll affect mostly the New England region. And then we'll have a bit of a quiet pattern before this next Pacific system gets started in California here. That'll be around midweek. So that'll be coming on the coast around the 22nd, and then across the Rockies on the 23rd, and then into the Texas region around the 23rd through 24th. And that's around when we're watching for severe weather here in Texas. And then round 2 coming in on the 26th here, and then coming up through West Texas there on the night of the 26th into the 27th. And then possibly another shot at rain here around March 30th and April 1st. So it looks like things will be getting active here later this month. So I think we're about ready to head into the forecast. So let's get that set up here. Let me see if I can shrink this window down a little bit. Yeah, this looks a little bit better. And maybe I can get the valid time. I would really like to get that valid time there on the chart, but I don't know if I can do that. No, that's going to cut off too much data. So We'll just go back to how we had it. Okay, let me get everything queued up and then we'll head on into tomorrow. And I think with that next system coming into Indiana and Michigan, we should certainly take a look at the NAM. The NAM model is more of a regional model, and this will allow us to take a better look at what's going to be happening for that area of the country. And we'll start out looking at that right there. So here's our system coming through. Yeah, there we go. There's our system coming into Manitoba here. So we know where that occluded front is. Right like that. And here comes our next system heading for that part of the country. So we're going to start out seeing a little bit of rain here overnight in Indiana and in the Chicago area. A little bit of mixed precip in that area too. And looks like it'll start converting over to snow here. And I am developing some snow bands there towards morning. And then on the lee side of that, looks like we start getting some rain moving in just after that snow band. Okay, so 15Z, this is tomorrow morning. And that'll move through. Hang on, let me get things. Yeah, okay, this is good. Okay, so there's tomorrow morning. It looks like we've got a bit of dry slotting working into that area. So we see there's this initial push, that snow band coming through. And then midday, a few showers in there in that region, and then that clears out. The dry slot moves in. And it looks like some of that clearing is also associated with a cold front moving through that area. So here's the frame for tomorrow night. There's the cold front moving through the Illinois and Missouri area. And then the warm front from southwestern Michigan into West Virginia, just like that. So the colder air, snow band, well up to the north in Ontario and northern Michigan. And then we get that warm sector moving through the region. And that dry slot I was talking about, that's more associated with the cold front right here. Okay, so anyway, I was getting a little bit off track there because one problem I have with these weathercasts is having to cover too much of the country at once. So sometimes I miss out on some key details. But here comes the system early in the morning on a Saturday, now moving into the eastern U.S. And then by the time we do the webcast on Saturday evening, looks like that's mostly off the coast. There's the occlusion going through the New York City area up into northern New York. And this is the upper level system right here. So a lot of snow shower activity in Pennsylvania and western New York there. Okay, and then we get a period of clear weather, fair weather across the central U.S. One more northern stream system moving through that area. And there that goes right there. That'll affect mostly Ontario. Looks like just rain there for Indiana and Ohio. There's the cold air advection building in on the back side of that. Ridging coming down through the central U.S. on the 22nd, and this is when we're looking for the system to be moving onto the California coast right here. And that'll be crossing the Rockies on the 22nd and 23rd. There it goes. And we're going to be looking for showers and some thunderstorms in Oklahoma around the 23rd or 24th here. So there they go. Moving into Arkansas and Louisiana early on the 24th. And then into the southeast U.S. around the morning of the 25th there. And then shot number 2, this is associated with some deeper cold air. There's a cold core low right there. Front coming across the southern Rockies right here. And then it pulls into the Texas region. So another shot of showers around the 27th and the 28th. And then to the 29th, looks like it'll split up. GFS going for some ridging in the southeastern U.S. Northern part of the system moves into the northeast U.S. right here. And then the other side of that, associated with some cyclogenesis down in this region, bit of overrunning here in Texas. So we see that overrunning kind of taking hold there. Upper level dynamics move northeastward and up and over the cold dome. And then we get more cyclogenesis out to the west. There's our front developing right there. This is around April 1st. And then I think we are to the end of the GFS run. Okay, so that's the full picture of what's happening over the next couple weeks. Looks pretty busy there. All right. Tom J says his cat keeps blocking the TV screen. Any chart for past and future snow amounts in the mid-Atlantic and Northeast? I think we would just go with what the GFS has here. See if we can bring that up. Total accumulated snowfall. Let's check that out real quick. So total accumulated snowfall right here. The blue amounts that you see right here. This is going to be an inch and above. The dark blue amounts, those are going to be 3 inches. So here's those snow bands coming there into the northeastern corner of Indiana into Michigan. So it does look like Detroit gets maybe 1 or 2 inches there. Then we lay down this corridor of snow into the New York City area, so they're going for possibly 6 to 8 inches there in the New York City area. So some locally concentrated snowfall amounts there. Here comes shot number 2, around the 24th and 25th. So you can see that is going to affect mostly the Ottawa area up to Montreal. And then after that, things are pretty quiet. No additional snowfall amounts. We will watch out to the west right there with that new system coming in. But 240 hours, that's about as far as we can go with the GFS. Adam Davis says, drunk neighbors hollering Motel 6 is cheap, but the clientele is questionable. Yep, I've been there myself. Sue M, looks like a snowy trip home for Adam. Okay. Okay, well, I hope you had a good, hope that was interesting or at least informative. And we'll see you tomorrow night. Thanks for watching.